welcome back to my channel. I appreciate you being here today. It's a place where I mostly talk about books, and today we are going to talk about quite a lot of books. I'm going to do a book haul, mostly because they're one of my favorite types of videos to watch from other creators. I get a lot of really good ideas for books that I want to put on my TBR or my wish list from other people's book hauls. So I'm going to talk about the books that I have hauled in the last couple of months. These are going to be books that I haven't mentioned getting in other videos, so it should be all new. I've kind of tried to group them in genre. The overwhelming majority of the books that I have today are fantasy. I also have some mystery. I've got a few nonfiction. And then I've got a couple of miscellaneous. So I think I'll probably start with the miscellaneous because they're just, I don't know, I'm an organization person and these I couldn't organize, so let's get these out of the way first. I picked up John Dies at the End. This is the first novel in this series by Jason Pargin. I think there's 4 books in total now in the series. From what I understand, this is a comedy horror novel about 2 paranormal investigators. I love horror and I love comedy, so I feel like I'm gonna love this. I did sample this from the library, the first couple of chapters. I absolutely loved the writing, so I went and bought it. It also comes really highly recommended from a couple of my friends. They read it shortly after it first came out, 15 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that, and they hyped it since then. I'm only just now getting around to it, but I think I'm really gonna like this. In the same vein of comedy, except this is like a crime noir. If you couldn't tell by the title, noir, crime noir comedy. This is by Christopher Moore. I've sampled him in the past, but I haven't read a full book from him before. This also sounds very funny, right up my alley. I love books that can weave comedy into just the entire way of writing and the plot, so I'm also really happy to have this one. Moving on to my mysteries, I grabbed Inspector Imanishi Investigates. This is by Seicho Matsumoto. This is a translation from Japanese, and it's pretty well recommended as an excellent mystery. I heard someone mention that if you like Christie, you would probably like this, which I love Agatha Christie, so hoping I will really like this one. It's about an inspector in Japan who is attempting to solve some homicides, so we will give this one a try. I also have Death and Croissants by Ian Moore. I've seen that this one is pretty popular among readers in the UK, and so it intrigued me. I believe this is the first book in a series. It sounds like a very amusing but also kind of cozy mystery series about a gentleman who runs, I believe, a bed and breakfast, and there's a guest disappearance, and of course our main character is just an everyman and is going to attempt to solve the mystery of what's going on. Since the other 2 mysteries sound like they're kind of in the style of Christie, this would not be a complete book haul if I did not include Agatha Christie. I know I've mentioned before, I have all of the Christie books in e-format, but I really prefer physical books, so I am working on building my physical library of Agatha Christie's. So for this group, I picked up Death in the Clouds. This is a Hercule Poirot. I also picked up The Murder at the Vicarage, of course, Miss Marple. And then The Man in the Brown Suit, which is a standalone Agatha Christie as well. Again, I've read all of these, but just working on building my library. These are some really nice copies, so I'm happy to finally have these in my physical collection. Moving on to the nonfiction section of this haul, I picked up Reading Lolita in Tehran. This is by Azar Nafisi. This is the memoir of a woman who was a teacher in Iran, and she secretly had a group of her female students that she gathered together for a book club, and they started to read Lolita. There's many restrictions on what the citizens in Iran can do, especially women, and there's a lot of books that they're not allowed to read. So reading Lolita, not a thing that they're allowed to do. They're doing it in secret. They're also reading other Western classics, and this is the author's memoir of her experience with her female students, trying to learn and be exposed to other cultures and ideas while living in an oppressive regime that doesn't want them to do any of that. I picked up this big chunky thing. I could not find it in a better size. As far as I hate how dense it is. I wish it were taller. But this is Cuba, A History by Hugh Thomas. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a history of Cuba. I have been to Cuba. I really enjoyed my trip to Cuba. I would love to go back. I don't think of it as a vacation because it was more of an educational trip that I went on, and I strongly recommend for anyone who can go to Cuba to go. It is by far the best place that I've traveled to where I absolutely learned the most. It was so eye-opening to see how the Cubans in modern day are living and how they have to cope with the international politics that are completely outside of their control. I spoke to so many Cubans while I was there, you know, hearing about their experience, the things that they go through, their own culture, and it was incredible. And again, I strongly recommend anyone that can go to Cuba and just see it for yourself, talk to Cubans, see what's going on in the country. But yes, definitely I am very interested to get more of a formal history of Cuba. So I picked this. Look at this. This is stupid. How many pages is this? Good Lord. This is over 1,000 pages in like a mass market paperback size. Oh my God. But what are you gonna do? So I got a Cuban history. And after, of course, the book that I recently read, I really loved, about the Byzantines, it sparked me to redevelop my interest in the Silk Road. So I picked up the book, The Silk Roads. This is by Peter Frankopan, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a history of the Silk Road, how it's impacted basically the world. You know, the Silk Road was how different countries and cultures connected for hundreds of years and, you know, spread different ideas and supplies. And I think it's going to be a really good, not just an interesting history, but I think it'll probably inspire me for where to look next for different histories to go to, just because it did, you know, it spanned east to west. There's so much that happened and for so long. So I think this will be a good starting point as well for other history nonfiction to look at. Moving on to some classic books, I picked up Treasure Island. This is by Robert Louis Stevenson. I love this copy that I got. You can see the shimmer, and I love this. I love the versions of these. This is the, I think it's the puffin cloth bound is what they're called when I was looking them up. I really love the designs on these, so I've got a couple of more. Why do I keep saying that? I have a couple more that I'm looking at getting as well for classics. But of course, this is about pirates, and I clearly have a somewhat surprising, because I didn't realize it, I have a significant interest in pirates. To be fair, I do love the Muppets Treasure Island movie. That might even be my favorite Muppets movie, so I'm already somewhat familiar with this story, but I do plan to read this. I'm not sure if I ever read this when I was a kid, but it'll give me a good chance to go through it again. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I grabbed this one because, to be honest, I'm not sure if this is one that we read in high school or not. I can't genuinely remember if I have ever read this, but I feel like it's a book that I should read. So it's on like my very long list of classic books. Although this is what I'm considering like a modern classic, so it won't be part of like my classics series, but I do plan to read modern classics as well as part of something else. I've got like a little reading project planned, so it'll give me a good opportunity to read through this one. The last two classics I picked up are modern classics as well. They're both by Salman Rushdie, and I have not read either of them. I picked up The Satanic Verses and Midnight's Children. Of course, his writing was so controversial that a fatwa was declared on him, and I really feel like these are books that I should be reading. Anytime someone wants to ban books or takes a serious stance against them, honestly, it just makes me more intrigued, particularly if they want to ban the books for religious reasons. So I am very interested to finally read Salman Rushdie's work, and I have some plans for these probably this year. The rest of the books I think are all gonna be fantasy. There's a lot of fantasy that I picked up in the last couple of months, so we're gonna get started. It's kind of a wide variety of fantasy, so it'll be interesting to see what all I've gathered together. These are in not really any particular order. First, I have Hotel Magnifique by Emily J. Taylor, and I just love the color of this. Look at that. The color of this cover. I think it's beautifully designed. This book, from what I understand, is about two girls. I think they're sisters. They end up staying at a hotel that's magical, but also turns out to be somewhat sinister. So they're trying to figure out the mystery of the magic behind the hotel and what's really going on there. I debated putting this one with the classics, but I think it's more appropriate in the fantasy category. So this is The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. I have not read this one either, but it is so well regarded as a classic fantasy book. It's about the experience of the last unicorn and the quest that they go on that leads them to learn more about life. It sounds like this is going to be really good. People who have read it say the collective opinion is that this ends up being a pretty emotional or touching book. So I'm very interested to see where this one goes. And I do plan to finally venture into Tea Kingfisher. So I picked up A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. I understand that with this author, there's some of her books that are part of a series, but I believe this is a standalone. This one, from what I understand, is about a wizard and Mona. Mona is doing magic and I don't think is very good at it, is kind of a misfit, and stumbles onto a mystery. And so it sounds very much like a cozy magical thing that kind of reminds me of the same genre as like Legends and Lattes, so I'm very, very eager to read this one. And Nettle and Bone, the other Tea Kingfisher that I picked up, this one sounds more like kind of turning a fairy tale on its head, which I love those kinds of stories. And this one, of course, has been huge. It seems like everyone loves it. I thought this was going to also be a good place to start because I understand this is one of the standalones as well. And I do really want to start the Iron Druid Chronicles, so I picked up the first book, Hounded. This is by Kevin Hearn. From what I understand, this is a druid, as in the Druids, who's been on the run from ancient gods for like a really long time. And it sounds like it's supposed to be funny as well, which, as I said earlier, I love books that weave, comedy into it. And so, fantasy, a comedy, I love that mashup. And this sounds like it's going to be really good. It's also going to fit into another project that I'm working on for this year. In March, I finished the Alex Stern series. Well, for what's out right now with the Alex Stern series, I read Ninth House and Hellbent, both by Leigh Bardugo, obviously, because they're part of the series, but I really loved them, and I definitely want to read more of Leigh Bardugo, so I ended up buying the paperback editions of the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I know that this is going to be quite different because these are YA, and of course Alex Stern is adult, but these are these are all fantasy. Which, I mean, and I just love Leigh Bardugo's world building and her ability to write, so I'm hoping that it's the same kind of quality, even though this is YA. And I mean, it seems to be pretty well regarded, right? This series. I know obviously that it's on Netflix, and oh god, one thing I didn't like though, and can we like stop doing this? Why do they keep putting these, like, stop it. Publishers, stop it. You don't need to actually print these promos on the book covers. Like, stop it. I hate it. I hate it so much. I don't like tie-in editions, and I don't know, it's just like an eyesore. This is such a nice cover, and then it's a stupid eyesore on the front. Whatever. It's a stupid thing to like be irritated about, but you know what? It's my money that I'm spending on these books, and like, just let me have the pretty cover. You don't need to stick the promo on it. That's all I'm saying. A lot of the book recommendations that I get are actually from Reddit. There's a lot of really good book-related subs on Reddit if you're not familiar with it. So that's where I get a lot of suggestions for books to look into. And this is a series that like everyone in a thread that I was in said was really good. This is the Amber Chronicles by Roger Zelazny. It's really hard to find these separately. There's 10 books and they're all in this giant tomb omnibus thing. It was really hard to find them individually. Honestly, if I were to buy them individually, I think I would have had to end up spending like hundreds of dollars because I guess they just don't print the individual ones anymore, maybe. But I mean, this sucker was only like, I don't know, $20, something fairly reasonable for 10 books. So I got these. It's a fantasy series. I don't know a lot about it. I like to mostly go in blind. It sounds like it has to do with parallel universes or parallel realities. Like I said, it's fantasy, there's magic in it. So I think this is going to be really good, and I do have a plan for this one. This actually, even though there's 10 books in here, it's only like 1,200 pages. So honestly, I think this will go really fast. From what I understand, there's 2 story arcs. Like I think books like 1 through 5 are one story arc, and then 6 through 10 are another. So it sounds like it's gonna probably be a fast read. And I mean, this is, like I said, highly recommended in one of the threads that I was in, so I just decided to take a chance on it. If you are looking for good book recommendations, like I said, Reddit is an awesome place to go for it. If you look, there's tons of book subs. I love the fantasy book sub, just the books book sub. I like the book suggestions book sub. That's a big one where I get a lot of recommendations from. But yeah, if you're just looking for like a wide variety, all in, like, just condensed down into one spot, I mean, the places that I get most of my suggestions from is the booktubers that I like to watch, but also honestly, as often or possibly more often, depending on how much time I'm on Reddit in a day, it really varies. Reddit is a great place if you're looking for book suggestions. I finally picked up The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I have not read this one. I thought this was a beautiful copy too. This was, I believe this is the special, like the Barnes & Noble special edition. So beautiful coloring on this. And from what I understand, it's a retelling of the Iliad, but from a different perspective. I do have an upcoming project that I'm gonna do going through some of the Greek retellings. So this will probably be included in that group of books that I go through. I don't think I've mentioned this next one before or having picked it up, but I did. Look at this sucker. I picked up A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. I grabbed this. I think I got this on release day. It's been so hyped. I do have The Priory of the Orange Tree, but I haven't read that yet because once I finally felt like getting around to it, this was already like announced. So I figured, much like Ninth House and Hellbent, I figured I would wait for them both before I actually got started. So I am very excited to read these. This sounds like a fantasy I'm really going to enjoy. I've seen nothing but good things about this. So I hope people are not steering me wrong. I hope the hype is for a good reason on these, and even though it's, I mean, these things are massive, but people say that the reading of them tends to go really fast just because they're so good. So I do have this one. I've got the same, like the hardcover style of The Priory of the Orange Tree. So I'm hoping maybe this summer I can start on these. Like I said, they're huge, and I do have some other projects that I'm planning on, but I do have this for whenever I can actually get started on both of these. The next author I believe I got as a recommendation, but for the life of me, I can't remember where. It might have been a booktuber, but I'll be honest, I can't remember, because I watch a lot of booktubers, but I also read a lot of book suggestions on Reddit, so I'll be honest, I can't remember where this one came from. Anyway, I picked up the first book in the Wars of Light and Shadow series. This is by Janny Wirtz, and it's called The Curse of the Miswraith. From what again, this was like if I wanted to get a better size of this and not like the mass market paperback that's like comically thick, it would have cost, I think, like $80, like so stupid. So here I am with my stupidly thick mass market sized book. I don't like mass market, but I'm also not prepared to spend $80 for this kind of a thing. So this is the first book in a series. I don't recall offhand how many books are in this series, but this author has a ton of books, and I'm intrigued to read this one. From what I understand, it's about two brothers who both have the ability to do magic, and they don't get along. They're kind of rivals, and they're banished to another world where this is definitely the kind of fantasy where it's like they bring balance to the force. No, that's a different franchise. They bring balance to the world, and they've got to find a way to overcome their rivalry to defeat the common enemy of the Miswraith. So at some point I'm going to start on this. Like I said, this author comes pretty well regarded and has a ton of books when I've looked. So hopefully I'll like this one. It'll be a new author that I can just like go totally wild in their entire catalog. Yeah. And another one by the same author. This is To Ride Hell's Chasm, but this should be a standalone novel from what I understand. And this is, I believe, about two soldiers who are on a quest to save a missing princess and, of course, save the kingdom at the same time. So I totally love, I hope this is going to be really good. There's, I mean, some pretty like cool artwork on the back. So mythical creatures, I can get down with mythical creatures. So at some point this year, I do have a plan, again, as part of a reading project to get through this one. Most of the books that I have, honestly, I do have a plan for likely this year. So hopefully they're not books that are just gonna like sit on my shelves forever without reading them. I do have a plan for most of these that I've acquired. I admit that I gave in to FOMO and picked up this next one because of peer pressure. I picked up Babel by R.F. Kuang, and I wasn't going to buy this one outright, but man, everyone is praising this, and it seemed like the right thing to do. I was in Barnes & Noble, and in fact, I think this one was on sale, like a discount when I saw it, and I was like, look, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it. Everybody likes it. It's a historical fantasy from what I understand, and I'm like, I probably won't be bad, right? Like, everybody likes it. I did it. I don't often give in to just peer pressure in buying books, but I have to admit, this one I gave in to peer pressure. This next one, I had to laugh when I discovered it. This was 100% a Reddit recommendation. I've seen it come up over and over again in different different threads in Reddit, and people love this. So I don't know, we're gonna give it a try. It's Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinneman. Look at this little cat. Look at this little cat. It's hard to see him, but look at that. From what I understand, this is like a lit RPG, but apparently not in the way, okay, I'm gonna try to do a complete sentence now, okay? I don't know that I've read a lit RPG. I do like RPGs, but I don't know that I've read a lit RPG. A lot of people in their critique of lit RPGs, they don't care for them. Apparently, whatever makes those people not like normal lit RPGs apparently doesn't apply to this. Apparently, even the people who don't like normal lit RPGs really like this one. So I'm gonna give it a try. There's more books in this series, so if I like it, I'm gonna order others. I believe this is independently published, and people say it's very funny. And I mean, look at this cat. Like, of course it's gonna be really funny. Look at the kitty that's in it, come on. So I'm going to read this one, and we will see also if this one lives up to the hype. Finally, my last two, and they are big ones. So I know I've spoken before when I was in my 20s, many years ago. When I was in my 20s, I was really like hyper focused on building my career. I was working like crazy hours, probably, I mean, most weeks I worked like 80-hour weeks. When I got home, the last thing I wanted to do was open a book, I'll be honest. So for most of my 20s, I barely read anything. Well, during that time is when one Mr. Brandon Sanderson just blew up, and now of course he's bigger than ever. He's been on my list for quite a few years now of books to get around to, but I am finally gonna do it. So I did pick up 2 of his books. Of course, these are the ones that I picked up. I picked up Mistborn, and I also picked up The Way of Kings because I was initially debating which one to start with. However, once again on Reddit, and P.S. this video is not sponsored by Reddit. It's just probably the only social media that I use outside of YouTube. If we're considering YouTube to be social media, probably Reddit is the only one I use. So if you haven't been on there and you like Brandon Sanderson, there's some really good Brandon Sanderson centered subs that you can look at. Brandon Sanderson himself is pretty active on Reddit, and one of the subs for Brandon Sanderson has a really helpful guide of like a reading order to go through, how to actually start in going through Sanderson's work. So I did finally settle on a starting point and a path to read through. I believe I'm going to be starting with Mistborn. A lot of people say not to start with this one, but the reading order and the justification in that sub is, it makes sense to me to start with this, and I keep in mind that Sanderson's writing is probably going to improve, like his storytelling, because I know this is one of his first books, if not his, no, I think maybe there was like, what, 2 others before this one? Anyway, so yeah, I am going to be in the next couple of months starting on this one for sure, because I mean, most people that have read his books seem to really like his books, and it's like right up my alley, the kinds of fantasy that he writes. So I will be finally starting on the Cosmere. So that's where we're at, and that is actually my last books in this haul. I really thought it was gonna take a lot longer to go through these than it did. Because I've got like a stack of books here, but got through these pretty quick. So that this of course doesn't include, like, I have books from Waterstones, but they take a while to get here, so I'm not including them in this video. I'll probably continue to include them in like my mid-month updates. I think that would probably make more sense. That's where I also update on like my bookbox books. Yes, so I hope that you enjoyed this haul, and this is gonna be the last one for a while. I've got plenty of books to go through now for the next few months, certainly. So hopefully this can kind of quell. The problem is there's so many good books, and you know, I get books from like thrift stores or, you know, bookstores, and in a thrift shop, if the book is in really good condition and it's a book on my TBR, they're only a couple of dollars. So I have a really hard time not buying them in that instance. Otherwise, if I'm not buying at a thrift store, I really only buy books if they're on sale. So if there's a good sale price and it's a book that I know I'm probably going to want to read, then I have a hard time not buying it in that instance too. But like, I try not to buy books that I don't think I'm gonna like. I don't want to spend money on books that I don't think I'm gonna like. So I don't know. There's kind of a method to my madness in how I approach book buying. But this was a lot of books. This was a lot of books for a couple of months. So we're gonna hold off for a little while on buying more. Anyway, do you have any of the books that I talked about today? Have you read them? Do you plan to read them? Let me know what you think, or if you have any other good recommendations, like you've seen the kind of fantasy and mysteries that I picked up. So I am always open to book recommendations from people, books that you really like, or that, you know, after seeing what I buy, something you think I might really like, let me know. Anyway, I appreciate you stopping by today and watching my video. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.